here from Great Leap Skyward. Today I just wanted to talk quickly about something we get asked about a lot, which is the signature part of our sound.
This is an EBow.
It's something we use a lot. You can use it for making leads. You could use it for sort of as more of a background element and almost make it sound like a synth. But today, I'm going to show you how I use it and how I go from scratch dialing a tone all the way to something I can put in the final mix. Actually, probably first when I heard like some stuff on Blackwater Park, I'd sort of heard these real kind of like these long, really sustained notes being played from what sounds like a, overdriven guitar. And I remember playing in like a cover band I did when I was like 16. Everyone in the band had all these ideas and telling me what to do, and we tried to like pick and like drown it out with reverb, play and then fade in the volume, and all these things, but you could just never get that kind of sustain. And I always really liked this really long drone kind of sound, but I never figured out how to get it until one day I kind of learned that there's things like EBows that allow you to kind of have this almost infinite sustain on a guitar and give this really like legato passage. I always just really liked that, and I was just really excited to be able to incorporate that into my own music. The guitar sort of takes this role that's like, it's not a guitar lead, it's not a synth, but it's kind of something in the middle, and that's kind of really unique, I think.
So here I have a recorded take of our EBow lead loaded into the DAW. The first thing to think about is how can we try and sculpt the tone using a guitar amp and speaker cabinet. You can choose to run it through any sort of clean amp or anywhere from a low to high gain amp depending on your preference. So let's have a look at the tone I used to record this. So I'm using my AX8 to handle the drive pedal, amp and speaker cabinet simulation. But you certainly don't need an Axe FX to replicate something like this. There are plenty of free VSTs and alternative plugins you can use to achieve great results by following the same guide. I'll link some of those in the description. If you have a real amp and cabinet, you can obviously use that. First, we have our drive pedal. I have the tone and level set to 5. This is just to try and clean up some of the low end. Moving on to the amp block, I have perhaps a bit more gain than I really need, but I'm using this to try and get the character of the amp and the distortion to try and smooth out the tone a little. And I find this amount of gain works to dull some of those harsher upper mid frequencies. Everything in the tone is very close to noon. At this stage, it can sound a bit muddy, but we don't necessarily need as much high-end clarity and information in the tone as we normally would, since we aren't worried about note attack or picking. A lot of this depends on personal preference and which speaker impulse you use. I'm using a blend of 2 speaker cabinets. Just like any guitar tone, you'll want to carefully mix and match, or sometimes just use one to produce the character you want. So that does it for our guitar tone. So now let's have a listen to it completely dry. So that definitely sticks out like a sore thumb quite a bit. So let's move on to some post-processing, which is where the majority of the sound shaping is going to happen. So first, I have a high pass, which is quite aggressive, nearly up to 400 Hertz. I also have a low pass, which is similarly pretty aggressive, just under 5K. The next thing you do is to try take out some of those unpleasant high mids, which the EBow has no shortage of. So I've taken out some 3K and some 4K, just to make the whole thing sound a little less painful. So let's have a listen back now. Maybe a little bit better. Now it's time for my favorite part, which is where we basically drown it out in effects. So again, I would usually start with delay. Right now I'm actually just using the default Ableton Echo plugin. You can use any delay you like. Most plugins will have some rudimentary form of filtering on the delay. But since we have such long delay tails, it's really important to be able to filter these so that we don't have build-up or feedback problems in very high or very low registers, which can totally destroy the mix and also just get really loud. The most obvious thing to preserve mix clarity would be to cut the length of the delay tail, but where's the fun in that? Next, we can move on to reverb. I really like FabFilter's Pro R because of the ability to put high pass and low pass, or generally EQ the reverb tail. This again stops the buildup of extremely high or low frequencies when we have really long delay times. So onto the settings. I find most of these are to taste. One thing I like having is quite a long tail. You see I've got 10 seconds. This is because I like the entire EBow passage to seem like a continuous series of notes rather than just a lead. This sort of helps it blend into something a little more than just another guitar lead. Just like the delay, I have it very wet. We're at about 40%, but now let's have a listen to the final product. And that pretty much covers it. We've gone from something using an EBow to now creating this sort of otherworldly, crazy sort of ambient lead tone. I hope you found that useful. If you liked any of the music you heard, you can check out the rest of our YouTube channel, where most of our songs are uploaded. If you liked the video or want to hear more about our band, don't forget to hit like and subscribe.